Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you so much for your interest and participation today. As you've heard, we are recording this session. You do not need to, except for our speakers as they speak, you do not need to have your cameras on. Please make sure, unless it's question and answer time, that you have your mic muted, which I see everybody does. Thank you. And the speakers, just so you know, and everybody knows, we will be using a little timing tool just to make sure we honor everybody's 1 hour time span. If we go a little bit over and somebody has to sign off, we understand that. But we will monitor the chat box, and we will have a time towards the end of the program for audience Q&A. So, have them ready or put them into the chat, and we will monitor that. So without further ado, I'd like to go over the agenda and get started quickly. We're going to start with our speaker introductions. We're going to ask each of our speakers to obviously to state their name, their current role, what their company or organization does, and the top challenge that they are finding in today's environment, and briefly how their company and how their role is positioned to have the power to face this major challenge within the life science business. I know that's a lot to cover. We're going to ask you to keep it to about 3 to 4 minutes maximum each. And then we will go to career pathways. So asking each panelist to share mostly entry-level opportunities in your field and the required skills and experience or education to get there. And then also to share your personal career pathway. We find that our participants love hearing how you got to where you are, the pitfalls, the curves, or was it a straight line? So, that's, and one of our panelists was a former BioFlex pre-apprentice, so please tell us that as well. So without further ado, I'm going to start with focusing on our panelists, and Dr. Alvin Smith, would you be our first person to introduce yourself and the major challenge that you see in your business?
Sure. Hope everyone can hear me. Yes. Good afternoon and welcome. It's always a pleasure. Deborah, thank you for continuously inviting me and allowing me to be a part of this. So this is super fun, always. So yes, my name is Alvin Smith, and so I work at JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory here in Pasadena, which is NASA's only FFRDC, which is a federally funded research and development center. And so our bread and butter, if folks aren't familiar, is really the robotic exploration of planets. And so my role at JPL is, it's actually a couple-fold, but really I'm called a planetary protection engineer. And planetary protection is how we think about preserving all of the great science that we collect and that our robotic missions and other missions collect, and how we do our best to make sure that we don't inadvertently contaminate anything, any of the science, preserve the richness of that science. And also, if we are doing a sample or missions that return science to Earth, which is one that we're doing with the Mars Sample Return campaign, which is really what I do just about every day, is that we make sure that if we bring anything back from other planets, that we do our due diligence so that we don't inadvertently contaminate our biosphere as well. And so it's a forward and a backward relationship that we do with planetary protection. And it's interesting because that's biology, and it really is rooted in deep in classical biology that many folks learn every day, and I've learned in high school and throughout college. So that's my role. It's very complex, and I certainly would talk about that a little bit later. And our top challenges there is really innovation, right? I mean, we're seeing now, we're really at the precipice of so much going on in space, from commercial endeavors where we have companies like Blue Origin and SpaceX and what have you that are doing phenomenal things. And there are partners in this. And so how we address the big challenges of going to other planets and sampling and doing different things and really learning a lot comes down to how we're effectively able to innovate, but also create wonderful collaborations and public-private partnerships to get things done. And so we're super excited to continuously partner with what we all are doing here with BioFlex and also AeroFlex as well to really help shape the next generation of explorers and scientists as well. So I'm super happy to be here. I know I got about 53 seconds, so I think that's about up. Did I answer all the questions, Deborah?
That's great. That's great. I always like to call you our anti-contamination king.
Awesome.
Yeah, but yes, you have been a frequent panelist with us, and I know that you're always loved. So thank you so much. And we'll continue. That was in space, our challenges in space. Now our challenges for space. And for that, we're going to bring on David Johnson. Go ahead, David, tell us about you and the challenge.
Great, thank you, Deborah. And Dr. Alvin, I want to come, or Smith, I want to come work for you. That sounds great. Career change. No, thank you, Deborah, for having me here today. Pleased to be here. So on the subject of space, I'm actually an architect. I am a design director with Gensler. We're one of the world's largest design-oriented firms. We do everything from architecture to urban planning to the design of furniture and everything in between. So as a design director in this large firm, we're a global firm. I have the unique, really the privilege of seeing so many different, getting so much perspective from many, many different places and offices from a vast amount of work that we do. How that kind of fits into the life science equation is that I like to pull from all kinds of different project types and bring that into the life science realm. And if I kind of shift gears and talk about life sciences, I think one of the things that I find particularly interesting about working with scientists on the design of labs, for instance, is that science isn't just like math, right? There's something that's inherently creative to that process, not unlike the arts. And one of my favorite quotes, and it comes from Max Perutz, which is, he really characterizes this idea of creativity in science as something you can't organize discovery. You can't necessarily plot when it's going to happen. It arrives spontaneously. And so my job as an architect or as a designer is to make sure that the spaces don't become a hindrance to that discovery, that kind of magical act of discovery, and that the spaces that I design, if they're doing the job right, are actually enhancing it and creating those opportunities for discovery. Or I'd like to think they do, or hope they do. That's where I focus a great deal of my time and energy. Like I say, and kind of bringing and borrowing from different project types, whether it's retail or urban design or the design for a new education space or design for a hotel. All of these things have common elements in space that really can lend themselves to thinking about life sciences. So hopefully I answered the questions there.
And David, maybe you can give our audience a sample of where some of these labs that you've helped design are located, and what makes them enhance the discovery process.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. I think some of my recent work has been at USC, the Design of Molecular Biology and Computational Genomics building. It's probably been a decade now, but it was that project stands out in my mind because it was an interesting time when at the time it was on the boards, they were actually unraveling the genome sequence. And so as we were designing it, we were changing the way the scientists were organizing their labs. They were bringing many more computers in. It was much more computational based, and they were clearing out the space, which was traditional, really kind of wet bench space, as they call it, in an open laboratory. And so interesting to see that dynamic change. And as part of that, looking at those opportunities where we can bring people out of their labs, bring them together to meet, to talk, to just kind of hang out, you know, in those kind of serendipitous moments where the kind of spontaneity can happen and hopefully leads to greater discovery.
Great, thank you. And we'll come back in a little bit with you. Thank you so much, David.
Right.
And
Thank
now we wanted to take the challenge of the whole industry that Karina is going to help us with, and we called it the alphabet of keeping us safe. And this really pertains right now to food safety. And we'd like Karina to walk us through some of the acronyms that everybody should know and probably may not, and the challenges involved with this keeping people safe.
Well, thank you, Deborah, and thank you for having me here. And I'm truly humbled to be here with these other great panelists. So I will definitely touch on all the acronyms. Let me just first start off with the question. My name is Karina Rodriguez. I'm a GXP food auditor, FSMA consultant, educator, and mentor. Pretty much do it all. I work for MEIRxRS, and we do audit services, training, and apprenticeships, and we help recruit and match apprentices to companies in the life sciences, but I'm mostly in the food industry sector. So that's the other part of the our little company. One of the top challenges that we have, at least that I can speak for in the food industry and the 30 companies I've worked for in the last few years, is finding people to work due to the Great Resignation. Our company is centered, honestly, in building people up and moving them up in their careers and providing the education and training necessary to do so in conjunction with the host company, which is our power to face this particular challenge. And so, you know, it's a very employee-centered market right now, and we're up for that challenge. My position in particular helps guide startup to medium-sized companies in achieving approved supplier status with the third-party audit certificate. I also assist in getting them out of trouble with the FDA, which is the Food, Drug, and Administration. So there's your first ABC. And, you know, everyone plays a role with each other. So like, for example, the CDC, they help bring out guidelines, and then we interpret the guidelines from quality assurance, for example, and then we implement a program where we can say, okay, all the workers need to wear masks, they need to wash their hands, you know, and things like that. And we follow the guidance. So the Centers for Disease Control. So everybody, the Health and Human Services as well is all part of that. That's like the county level where they come in and inspect and make sure that, you know, for example, that we're adhering to like the pandemic protocols and guidances. And so as a quality assurance, not only are we maintaining, you know, the food safe, but we're maintaining worker safety as well. And so, you know, also I help guide the apprentices in the program succeed in the quality assurance position role. So that's what I also do as a mentor. And two of the things that have been noticed lately, what I've read and my other quality assurance colleagues, they said that, you know, what's helped them succeed a lot in avoiding job turnover these days is to provide not only faster onboarding, so the training and the learnings, but also a mentor. And so, you know, that's what our company does with the apprentices.
Maybe you can mention a couple, well, actually, we'll get into the next time, you know, to think about some of the apprenticeships that the students might be interested in. So think about that for the next section. Thank you so much. And let's continue now with the challenge within the climate agriculture environment, crop protection. And I'd like to introduce Sesar Juarez. And Cesar, tell us a little bit about you and the challenges you're finding and what you do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cesar, as she just said. Usually people ask me if I go by Cesar or Cesar. I usually tell people that my friends call me Cesar, my mom calls me Cesar. My current role is at Provivi Inc. It's a crop protection company. My title is planner buyer. I apologize in advance for being really vague with a lot of this stuff because I signed an NDA, and I usually, whenever I tell people about the company, I just say a lot of the things that are like publicly available, and anything else I'm just scared about sharing.
That's enough. Just give us the idea of what
Yeah.
it is. Yeah. And also what, when you say NDA, maybe you could explain that.
Yeah, non-disclosure agreement. When you work for like a company that has like intellectual property that is valuable to, the products that you're selling, and it's what makes you competitive. It's important, not to share that information, and then your competitors find out, and then it's an issue. But I think one of the challenges in the crop protection industry is that there are a lot of invasive species. So that's kind of one of the parts of agriculture that we're helping out in, and we're using like an unconventional approach. We use pheromones for crop protection. It's really just mating disruption. We apply pheromones to the crops, and then it leads to reduced mating of certain species. It's highly specific. And by doing so, there's less insects in the area, and then there's less crop destruction. This isn't a new technology. This has been used in vineyards, I believe, but because it was very expensive, no one really used it, and especially not for row crops like in Mexico, where they grow huge like rows of corn. And so like if you want to get a farmer to buy something that's like a lot more organic, usually the first thing they ask is how much is it going to cost me. And so really the ingenuity of Provivi is that Provivi made pheromones for crop protection scalable using Nobel Prize winning technology from Frances Arnold. She's a professor at Caltech, and she's a founder of the company, or a co-founder. And that's how we're facing the challenge of, how up to this point, I think the solution has been a lot of the time where if we have an insect and it's destroying our crops, the next year, let's just apply harsher chemicals, and let's just apply more, and let's just breathe it in, as we're, growing these crops. But now the challenge is being faced by Provivi, and we're applying a solution that isn't, let's just use harsher chemicals and let's just use more. And that's what we're doing.
That's great. Could you just briefly explain, in case somebody doesn't know what a pheromone is, just a quick definition?
Yeah, so according to our company, I just want to go by that, they're natural compounds produced by insects. They're produced by a lot of different organisms, but what we work with is by insects that act as messengers affecting the behavior of another individual insect. So in our case, we're making like huge quantities of these pheromones, and then we apply them to the crops. We're trying to affect the behavior of another insect and getting them, to be attracted. But instead of finding the mate, they really just can't find them because there's too much pheromone in the air. And so normally, you apply pheromones naturally, insect to insect, and you find each other. But in our case, there's a cloud of it over the crops. And while then they can't find each other anymore. And that leads to mating disruption.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And Cesar, by the way, was a Bioflex pre-apprentice. So I'm sure we'll hear that in his career pathway. So thank you very much. We're going to take a second for a little, see how much everybody gained at this moment. And are we ready with our little pop-up poll? Let's see, we've got that coming.
Yes. So now I'm getting a quick message. Hold on one moment.
Just wanted to make sure that everybody's there, so we thought we'd do a pop-up poll. If we can't get it, we can go on.
Deborah, can you see the poll?
No.
If you go to polls at the bottom.
Oh, yes. Okay,
Great.
so everybody, please go down to the bottom of your screen.
Oh, no, you just have to click on it and you click
Oh, I
launch
just
poll.
have to. Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Okay, there we go. Can you see it now?
Not yet. I think you have to. Oh, yes.
Yes. You're seeing
Thumbs
it?
up. Can participants see it? Okay, great.
Good. Okay, so please respond to the poll, just 4 questions.
If you're a speaker, you get an unfair
100%.
advantage.
Yeah, all right.
And for at least one of them.
Okay, we have 10 people participated. Come on, everybody. We got 50 people on this, 54 people. Come on, we're gonna give you another, not even a minute. So get your poll in there. Okay, we got half the group. I know some of you are on phones that make it a little difficult. Okay, I'll count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Closed at 38 participants. Great, thank you. And share the results. Are you seeing this? Can you see the results?
Yes.
It looks like, yeah.
Okay. So the real former BioFlex pre-apprentice stand-up would be Cesar. Our trained architect is David Johnson. Our person dealing with the food industry regulations and quality is Karina. Good job, everybody. And striving to protect both space and earth, Dr. Alvin Smith. Great job, everyone. Thank you. Okay. Onward. Okay, so for part 2, we're going to now ask our panelists to share the opportunities. Start, if you can, entry-level opportunities in your sector and a couple of the required skills or experience that's needed. And if you have used or see potential for apprenticeship, that would be nice to know. So let's start, Cesar, you're still big on my screen, so why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so in the biotech industry, a lot of the entry level roles usually like have technician attached to them. So if you want to work like in a chemistry lab, you'll be some sort of chemistry technician. In like a molecular biology lab, it'll be some sort of molecular biology technician. For a lot of them, usually they'll ask for a bachelor's, but I have seen like in some cases where like even when I don't know, I've just seen in cases where with an associate's and then a couple years in the industry, you could definitely get a role. But yeah, it's usually technician. Biotech, I really like this industry because it's like the fusion of business and science, and I've always been like very interested in business, but also I've always loved the natural sciences. And so I started off as a laboratory technician at this company, and then I moved on to become a buyer. And so I think I greatly benefited from having a background in the sciences and then moving on into like a purchasing role, because you can't just buy if you don't know about the product, and you have to work with a lot of the scientists. And it's nice, when you have, language that you can all share. But yeah, so entry level roles, there's sales roles within the biotech industry where you can start out as a sales representative. Huge companies like Thermo Fisher, VWR, they always have like sales roles where you could work and sell biotech products. And then, yeah, just, I guess, think of biotech as just like a huge business, like science business. The entry level roles are like super plentiful. If you wanna be on the bench, what a lot of people say, which is like doing a lot of like wet lab work, that'll be mostly technician work. And I mean, if you have like a PhD, that some of those roles technically count as entry level, just because you just graduated from your PhD program and now you're gonna work. But yeah, and I work in the supply chain specifically. And so there's a lot of supply chain roles, like a buyer, you could be a junior buyer, supply chain analyst. Yeah, there's a lot of, especially like in LA right now, there's like a lot of jobs in the biotech industry.
And one of our folks asked at Provivi what would be considered an entry-level position.
Usually a lot of our entry-level positions are technician roles. I know, like, if you were even to look at our website right now, we probably have like analytical chemistry technician roles, probably have some in like biology. Those would usually be the entry-level ones. Just because we have a product that we have products that we're selling now. So like, I don't know, we still kind of as a startup, because usually like startups, you're not really selling anything. You're selling an idea to the investors, and then you're developing things. But for a lot of startups, I think like the business roles, they're not so entry level, just because we're trying to build the company up. But a lot of our entry level roles are mostly like in the sciences. They're technician roles. And we have in Mexico City, we have an HR assistant role.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So same question for David. In the design architecture field, what is considered entry-level opportunities and the required skills, and a little bit about the movement from there?
Sure. I think a big part of it is, kind of an entry-level designer. And typically that's somebody who has had some college training in the field of architecture or in urban design planning or interior design. So that would be kind of the main architect designer kind of role. We also have a very robust marketing department, which is certainly critical for everything that we do. And so that's another support arm for the company. And so I think looking at graphic designers and writers and people who are really compelled to tell good stories and help support and give color to the kind of work that we're doing and kind of greater insights and access for people. I'd say those are really kind of the baseline things. The skills for those, and if I kind of shift more to kind of the architectural designer or planner, a lot of the industry has shifted into these computer programming and modeling. And so Revit is a platform that we use a lot for building information modeling, where everything is done in 3 dimensions and it all has sort of specifications and everything kind of baked into it. And it's a terrific collaboration tool because it's got the entire team is kind of working within the same model. So that's a very valuable skill set to have. And then of course there are other computer programs and modeling programs and things that support that work as well at a more conceptual level.
That's fabulous. And it was really helpful to have you on this program because I had a feeling that you were going to be able to bring in multiple other than science occupations that, that some of our folks might be interested in. So thank you very much. That's great to know.
Well, and I saw a number of people who are taking drawing classes and art classes. And so I think that's really good foundation for this kind of work.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh, Deborah, I think you might have muted yourself.
I'm sorry. Dr. Smith, let's go on to space. Are there any entry-level positions in what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So first off, so every year, actually around COVID, it slowed down a little bit, but after COVID and certainly now and what have you, we typically host about 800 to 1,000 interns. So first off, that's a really great way to get your foot in the door into JPL. And there are so many disciplines that really intersect with for mission success. For example, as I mentioned, we're building now spacecraft and that will go to Mars to retrieve samples that the Perseverance rover is collecting. And what that takes is obviously engineers, that takes business personnel, that takes a whole bunch of different types of engineers, from hardware engineers to computer science engineers to planetary protection engineers as well. And so there's many different disciplines that really intersect. And so for our internship program, and I always direct students there, that's the first place and the best place to get started. A lot of our JPLers have actually come through our internship program. My path was completely different, but that's how a lot of folks get their start. And so the best way for that, I'll give you some details. So one, if you're applying to the internship program, we have a couple of things that are available. One are just summer internships. And unfortunately, the deadline to get applications in on those was at the end of March. However, we also have year-round internships. And that's great for local kids and local students as well, because then that gives you access to other programs. Like we have programs called academic part-time, and that allows students to work on JPL projects and also still go to school. And so for a lot of those, you need at least a 3.0 GPA. For Entry level, let's say after graduation, typically we look for bachelor's. But again, if you're not entering into, say, the hard sciences or engineering, then, for example, in business, where we have lots of our HR folks or program management, lots of those folks, again, come from a variety of skill sets. And so that's also another area as well. So I would certainly direct people to go to our website at JPL, I think, careers, jpl.com/careers, I believe. And that's the best place to go. And you can just Google JPL careers and you'll find it there as well. Computer science is huge right now. Bioinformatics, obviously a big thing. So I encourage folks to really focus in, just like David was mentioning, on computer science, but really learning computer languages and things like that. So I'll stop there. I know my time's up.
Great. And, you know, even if some of our students are not at the level of being eligible for the internships, what you're telling them is these are the areas to concentrate on. And what each of our speakers, what I want our audience to realize is that we're talking about, this is how you prepare yourself for something that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So it's a pathway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll be back to you.
All
Karina, any information that you might give us on entry-level opportunities and the apprenticeships that you are involved with?
Yeah, so absolutely. Usually the entry-level opportunities, like everybody has been saying, if you're in quality or quality control, it's called like a quality control or quality assurance technician. And then, or even a laboratory, like an entry-level laboratory technician, if you're working in a food laboratory, for example, for testing. So, you know, so those are like the usual opportunities. And so what you do with that is not only, you know, you just make sure things are going well, but you help implement the quality management and food safety systems of the company that you're working with as an apprentice, alongside, you know, with a mentor, the guidance of a mentor. So that's the bonus of that, because, you know, you have somebody there to make sure things are going well, you know, and that you have the proper guidance so things don't go awry just as quickly. Honestly, the most basic skills, I know everyone always talks about the science and the importance of math and all of that. And I agree 100%. However, one of the things that I've noticed, and the most important, I think, to add on to that, is the ability or the skills to communicate, the ability to speak, the ability to write, and the quality of your ideas. So, you know, the knowledge of the basics of food safety and quality are helpful too, but you really can't get far without learning to effectively communicate. In the apprenticeship program, you know, it also helps, for me, it helped me understand the basics of food safety more after, you know, we can talk about that later in how our careers went, and understanding and interpreting regulatory and legal requirements and learning basics of quality too. So, you know, like, again, you can't go so far without learning to work with others and how to communicate with them. So as for an example, if, you know, you're a quality technician and your job is also food safety, if you can't spell out the ABCs to an employee, what and why they should be doing a process a certain way, then you've essentially risked the safety and quality of the food product. And in essence, also someone who's going to be eating it. So that's how we maintain people to be, you know, safe.
And if people are interested in an apprenticeship, how can they find out about it?
They can contact Trish Nunez. You know, we can have her email up on the chat, trishnunez@MEIRxRS.com. She'd be the first person, you know, to talk to or reach out and find out more about it.
Are students in do they have to be a minimum age?
I believe, I don't have the answer to that, actually. I would actually ask Trish for that information. Sorry.
All right, very good. Well, we'll get that information. Thank you so much. Terrific. Okay, let's go on to the next section. This is the fun part. And Karina, why don't you just stay there? This is when you're going to share your personal career pathway. If you experience the role of finding a mentor or mentors, and any organizations that students might consider joining or following as they pursue their career pathway.
Okay, great. So my story's not as straight and narrow like some others probably. I'm a daughter of immigrants and I'm first generation. I have a BA in integral liberal arts. I learned ancient philosophy, ancient science and math and, Ptolemy and all those and the ancient Greek language. And I wanted to use this degree to become a lawyer. I got a position as an admin for a law firm shortly after graduation, but in 2008, the housing market burst and I was unexpectedly without a job the next day because I worked for a real estate lawyer and no one had money to, pay the retainer for the lawyer. So needless to say, I had no job. So I started culinary school because I loved to cook while I was in college. And so I just, was a behavior interventionist for kids with autism and other disabilities. I worked as that while I was in culinary school. And then I just kind of realized, well, why am I going for an associate's degree when I can go get my master's because I already have a bachelor's degree? So I spent about 2 years doing prerequisites to complete my chemistry and math and to get into the Chapman's food science program. I worked as a behavior interventionist in the meantime while I crammed my prerequisites. So I did that for about 8 years. Once I got my master's degree, I had no experience in the food industry. So I was the first registered apprentice in the food for the state. And under the guidance of my mentor, because he just kind of fell on my lap, thank the lucky stars that I have, I completed my apprenticeship program now I'm the mentor auditor consultant for a company. So, organizations that I think you should consider to help broaden your network and your career are, as like I'm pointing up here, the American Society for Quality, and also the International Food Technologists, and their chapter here in Southern California is called SCIFs, or the Southern California IFT. That's, if you want to go into food science and the quality assurance role. I'm also currently the chair for ASQ's Next Gen Mentoring Program, and I also volunteer for the SCIFs New Professionals Committee. So I stay well connected with those organizations.
It is such an interesting career pathway. Thank you so much. That's terrific. Great. Let's see, David, how about you? What was your career pathway?
Not as interesting. My gosh, that's really cool. I think I always wanted to be an architect, and I kind of focused on that. So my dad was an engineer, electrical engineer. My mother was an art teacher. She taught kindergarten through 5th grade. And so I grew up always making stuff. And so that was just kind of in my blood, whether it was, building models or playing with Legos. I was always making something. And it wasn't until, I think when I was in high school, I started taking a drafting class, an architectural drawing class. And I really found my, kind of a niche for, translating this kind of 3-dimensional thinking into drawing. And so, Mr. Bird, who was my teacher at that time, he was my first mentor, and really encouraged that. I think from there on, it was right into college for architecture. I did an undergraduate degree at University of Florida, where I grew up in Gainesville, Florida. And then from there, I left Florida to come out to California, where there just was so many different kind of interesting things happening here in Los Angeles. And so it is like a living laboratory of architectures. We're sort of finding our way as a city to figure out how we're forming. And it's just been a great place to continue my education. I actually have a master's degree. I went up to Berkeley, again, for continued studies in architecture, and then brought it back to Los Angeles, where I continue to work. But I think through that whole trajectory, the thing that that I kind of keep going back to, interestingly enough, I guess, is that I've waited tables through that whole time, through college and stuff. And I think I've learned more about customer service and how to handle people through that experience than anything. And it has helped me immensely. So I think, never shy away from any of these opportunities that help shape who you are as a person. And those are the skills that you continue to draw on.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we've gotten to the kind of the basics of what we've talked, what we tell our students are the soft skills, the work readiness skills, customer service, communication, critical thinking, all those. So thank you, you and the others for mentioning these things as well. Okay. Dr. Alvin Smith, tell us a little bit about your interesting career pathway.
Sure, absolutely. And it's awesome to go right after David because one, I'm from Florida, from Miami, so it's always great to hear another Floridian there that made their way out this way. But then also with having to do jobs that are a bit interesting just to get you through, like waiting tables or pushing shopping carts. I did that too coming up. So my story is I did not envision myself here in JPL or here even a part of space. Actually, I started again in Miami on the East Coast, and I always loved science, always loved space, but it was very difficult at that time to really have so many role models that were in the space program. My parents were not engineers or astronauts or what have you. And so while I loved space and loved science, I really did not find or see myself in those careers because I just didn't see those people. So what I did see, because I was actually a premature kid by 3 months, so I was very small and spent a lot of time in the hospital, I saw a lot of doctors. And so I wanted to be a doctor. And then I had a bunch of pastors and folks in my community that were great to me. And so those were the people that I modeled my life behind. So I wanted to be a physician. I started off on that path. So I was accepted actually into a dual program for an MD and a PhD. I dropped the MD because I really started to love research. And so I did a lot of early research on the East Coast. I got my bachelor's from Talladega College. It's an HBCU, or historically Black college and university in Alabama. And then I went to Howard University in Washington, DC, where I got my doctorate. And so I focused a lot early on HIV research, and also taking that and spinning that into biodefense. And so I worked a lot with viruses. And one of the big ones really was Ebola and smallpox. So I was really working in the lab at the bench with these things. And I loved it until one of my colleagues we were doing Ebola research at MIT, and she decided to leave and said, I'm going to join the space program and be an astronaut. And we were like, what are you talking about? Next thing you know, in a few years, she became an astronaut and was the first astronaut to do DNA sequencing in space on the ISS. And her name is Dr. Astronaut Kate Rubins. So you can look her up and find out some amazing things about her. She's actually going to be on the Artemis mission and go back to the moon, which is huge. So we're super excited. And she became not just my friend, but a colleague, mentor. And I said, wow, so since you're doing this, I can take what I've been doing over my career and kind of parlay this into a space endeavor as well. Get out of here. So next thing you know, I'm applying and changing my life and changing my trajectory, which pushed me out here to JPL. And so that's how I'm now working. Really, all the things that I've learned in microbiology and biodefense are coming together to help protect the planets and also protect Earth as well. So that's it in a nutshell.
I love your story. It always fascinates me. And what it says to me, and I hope to those that are listening in, is that you, and others have said this, that you have to keep your ears open and you have to keep talking to people and be ready to take a risk. Take that giant step in a risk. Okay, thank you so much. Cesar, tell us a little bit about your pathway.
Hello. So I went to high school in like downtown South LA. The only reason I say that is because sometimes I tell people that my high school isn't downtown, but then I tell them where it is and they're like, no, that's South LA. And then I tell them, well, it's in this part. They're like, oh no, that's downtown LA. So it's a whole thing. But I had a great biology teacher named Mr. Duque at Orthopedic High School. My dad always had the Nature Channel on, but also the competitive side of me. I feel like just like telling people that I wanted to study biology because it sounded hard. but also I didn't know anyone in my circle that studied biology. So I thought it'd just be really cool to be the first one because I didn't know anyone. After high school, I went to Loyola Marymount. I enjoyed my laboratory classes a lot. I wasn't really thinking about after college though. Like I just, at that time in my life, I just didn't like see into the future a lot. I was just, going to school, just working my work study job and stuff. And it wasn't until I graduated that I started actually thinking about, getting a career. At that point, I knew I really liked laboratory work, and I got one job offer in San Diego, and I don't even remember what the company was, but I quickly realized that I just would not be able to afford just relocating out there. I didn't even have $1 to my name. I had -$dollars to my name because I had student loans. So I started looking for jobs in LA. Nobody wanted to hire me because like they would like literally tell me during my phone screenings, they would say, you just don't have any industry experience and you're trying to get a job in the laboratory. So you need to like know techniques. We're not just gonna hire you. And I always told them, I took a lot of laboratory courses. I took like a lot of classes because I really liked them. They said they didn't count. So that was super annoying for me. I started just sending a million emails, trying to meet people. I actually got introduced. I sent an email to Trisha Nunes, and she introduced me to Dr. Johnston from the Pasadena Bio Collaborative. And she just gave me the opportunity to just go into the lab and try to meet people. And once I was in there, like, I think the hardest thing with biotech is just getting your foot in the door, or just any industry really. And once you're in there, just don't let the door close. Just try to meet everyone. Just try to do everything. Like literally the first day I was in the lab, I already started applying to jobs and telling them like, hey, I'm in a lab now. I have industry experience, but it was just like one day. And then after doing all of that, I eventually had a couple job offers. And because Provivi was in the agriculture industry, and I've always just thought of agriculture as a very secure industry because people got to eat. That's the company I ended up going with. While I was interning at the Pasadena Bio Collaborative, though, I did receive the funding for me to have a paid internship through the BioFlex program. And I actually went up to San Francisco State one day to do like a 2-day workshop in laboratory safety that was funded by the BioFlex program. So that helped me out a lot because I wasn't just out of money this whole time. I had, money for some spending. But yeah, my career is I'm still pretty young. I only have 3 years at Provivi. There's a lot more to this story, hopefully in the future, hopefully good stuff.
I am sure, and I'm sure Wendy is sure that you have a big career ahead of you. That's great. And you have a great personality and a great affect, and thank you for being with us. So do we have our quick pop-up poll?
I think, Deborah, I think you're the one that can see it.
I'm not seeing it yet. Oh, wait a minute. You told me to go to polls. Okay. Can everybody see it? No, this is the old one. Sorry.
There should be a second poll.
Nope. Nope, sorry. Oh, wait a minute. Wait. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. This is new to me. Okay, second poll, real easy one. We want 51 people answering. I got 12. Let's keep it going. 25. 31. All right. Come on, I want 51. Well, maybe I'll take off my, well, even our panelists. Why not? Come on, 36. A few more. Do the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We've got almost 85% participation. Great. And the answer is overwhelmingly yes. I know I did, and I didn't respond to the poll, but I certainly did. Did I share them? There we go. There's the shared results. Great. Okay. So wrap up. This is our wrap up. This is a very special wrap up, folks. Stay on because we're going to ask our panelists to share one final thought, one piece of advice that they wish each of them had had in their early career journey that might help each of you. And why don't we start this time with Cesar?
I wish I knew about stock options. A lot of startups, you know, they offer stock options, and for me that's like, now it's a huge incentive now that I think about it. Their stock options, when you start off at like a startup, usually they give you the option, but you have the right, but it's not mandatory that you buy a certain amount of stocks from the company. And so like it's I don't know, like it's a very risky way, but also an easy way to achieve wealth, you know, later in your life, as long as you hold on to these stocks. Because I mean, like for me, you know, a young guy growing up, I mean, I didn't really have a lot of money and stuff. I don't think I could have just, you know, bought a bunch of stocks, you know, so this gave me an opportunity to buy share in a company. And when I talk about Provivi, I do like to talk about it as my company, because, you know, I started really early. I know the CEO, I know the CTO, we all know each other, and I have a lot of shares of the company. So I wish I knew about stock options.
Wow, he's taking us out for drinks. Okay, great. Karina, your nugget of thought here.
I guess what I really wanted to know, you know, is to trust that things come full circle eventually, that you should know the value and appreciate everything that you learn. So just to give you an idea, I currently work in helping food companies stay in compliance with the law and their customers. So I found a way of helping without being a lawyer. I mentor and help people grow and feel like I have something, you know, they have something worthwhile to contribute, which is deeply ingrained in my immigrant roots. I also have 2 kids with autism, which my skills as a behavior interventionist help me be a better mom and help them strive to be the best they can be too. So, you know, it also helped me understand a lot about human behaviors and in general, how to work with others and help them reach their goals too. So it all works out in the end is pretty much how I end it.
That's great. Thank you. David, how about you? Your one final thought.
I'd say sort of maybe 2 things: persistence and patience, right? I think kind of building on what Karina said. I think you can't give up. You have to kind of focus and push forward and be relentless about it at times, but know when to kind of sit back a little bit and be patient about things. So it's kind of it's finding that right balance, I think. But things do come full circle, and I think you gather all those nuggets along the way, which again kind of feed who you are as an individual, and ultimately that's your strength.
Balance of life. Thank you. Alvin, what would you have liked to know, or what's your final thought for the audience?
Sure. I want to steal everybody's, actually, because this is all great advice, especially the stock options thing. That's amazing. So definitely, I would say, as I think everyone has been kind of touching on, is really following your passion. Following your passions, whatever they are. And lastly, don't be afraid if, as you're pushing, as David was mentioning, or things coming full circle, that you're going to fail. That's the thing. There's failure that happens all the time. Sometimes they're big failures or small failures, but everyone fails, and don't be afraid of failure. It is our response to failure which truly is the mark of our success. It's how do we respond to that? So make sure that as you're going through, you're going to stumble. I stumbled, we all stumble, but it's our ability to respond to that and continue, as David mentioned and others, to persevere and push past those failures, to know that on the other end, there is truly success, but you got to keep pushing, but don't be afraid to fail. And fail early and fail fast, so you don't have to fail later in life as well. So that's also a nugget.
That's great advice. Thank you. On behalf of the South Bay Workforce Investment Board and BioFlex and all the people that are participating, I'm sure I really, really thank David, Karina, Cesar, Alvin, for your expertise, for your passion, for your time, for the work that you've done to prepare for today. And so that our audience knows that you will be able to, you'll get the recording. You'll also get their LinkedIn profiles if you want to link in with them. And if you need any help with getting onto LinkedIn, just let us know. And if you want to have a future conversation with one of them, do it through LinkedIn, or if they've told us another way, we will let you know that as well. Karina has posted Trisha's contact information if you are interested in the apprenticeship. And we want to encourage all of you to come back on the 28th for our part 2 of this workshop. And Donovan, I think, is going to give us a little bit of information about that, correct? Here we go. Go ahead, Donovan.
Oh, actually, Deborah, if you could talk about
Okay.
next week.
So we've taken a part 2 to the power and challenges of the life science industry. And we figured, how can we not talk about COVID when we talk about the discovery and challenges within life sciences? So we have brought together 4 people from, again, very different aspects of the life sciences, as you see on our picture here. We have Dr. Christopher Bousset, who is with Oakcrest Institute of Science, which is a BioFlex advisory board member. He will be talking about the science, the research end of how they dealt with COVID and how they helped the COVID impact make it better. Dr. Christopher Martin, who is with, again, one of our BioFlex advisory board members, Popup Americas, how manufacturing had to swerve and morph to get involved with helping the COVID pandemic. Then we have Edward Nazareth and Crystal, who are going to take the patient point of view. So as you can see, Edward Nazareth is the Director of Clinical Education at Torrance Memorial Medical Center. So you have the hospital view of how we dealt with patients. And then you have an entrepreneur, Crystal Adesanya, who is the founder and CEO of Kira Health. And Kira Health is a fascinating startup company that's dealing in the telehealth sector. So we have a fabulous program for you on the 28th. If you haven't registered already, please make sure you do. It's posted on the BioFlex group. It's posted, it'll be in your emails that Amelia will be sending out to you after this program. And Alvin, thank you, has given you the permission to use his email as well. So do check the chat in case someone has put some other information in there. And do we have any housekeeping notes, Amelia?
Just for the current BioFlex pre-apprenticeship cohort. So if you could just stay on for a minute,
Okay.
so we can talk about action items for the rest.
Okay, great. So again, thank you to everybody who came in. If you're in the current cohort, please stay on. Everyone else, you're welcome to sign off. We're just going to be going through some housekeeping with the cohort. Again, thank you to our panelists and to everybody who registered for this workshop. And thank you, Terry, for all your comments that you've put up.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
See you all.